We're looking at my top 100 favorite games of all time. This is 90 to 81. Hi, I'm Will. This is a channel where we like to play solo board games, we do reviews, we do playthroughs. Sometimes we have some guests on to do some multiplayer stuff and some interesting discussions. If you have any discussion topics, we're always looking for more things to talk about. And I have never done a top 100 or even a top anything of my favorite games. And I figured it's about time. You can watch my 100 to 91 in the previous video. And we're going to eventually end this with some guests to do the top 20. And this is my 90 to 81 favorite games of all time. And again, my favorites are constantly changing. There's always new games to play. There's also a ton of games I have that maybe I've only played a couple times and I don't really feel comfortable placing them on the list yet. And so, of course, things will change year to year. But this is the first time I've done this, so I'm very excited to share my list with you. Now on to my number 90. That is My City. This is the Reiner Knizia Legacy style game. I have been playing through this with my wife, and we're a couple missions away from finishing still, and it's taken us a long time to play through it. But it is just very interesting to see it evolve, see how the board state changes from kind of envelope to envelope. There's lots of stickers and things that get put on the board, and things get added, and things get covered, and new things get added, and other things get covered, and new mechanisms show up. And but the main kind of gist of the game is, you flip a card, tells you which tile to place, and you place it. You have to place it next to something that you've already placed. And then you're scoring generally connections to things. Things like this thing has to be touching this thing, or make a chain of colored buildings, or all the same color together, things like that. I won't go into too much details because I don't want to spoil anything. Maybe I'll give a spoiler review later at some other point when we're finally done. But it has been just a blast, and for bang for your buck, there's just so much to explore in this box. My number 89 favorite board game is Fury of Dracula. This is a pretty substantially timed game, I will say. It can end relatively quickly if Dracula gets swamped or caught early, but the experienced Dracula players will probably drag this on for a little while, but it never feels like it overstays its welcome. It's definitely an event-style game where because you're going to need to get 5 players together to play this, and that's the biggest hurdle, is rarely do I have 5 players at the table at once. Because otherwise, because you have to have Dracula and the 4 hunters, that means that you would have to split up roles, or one player plays multiple characters, and it's just awkward. It's more fun and it's faster when everyone plays their own individual roles, and it gives you more to sound off. Also, more reason for Dracula to get nervous. And this, I like to explain this game as it's like Snake, like the old mobile phone game Snake, where you are trying not to eat your tail. That's essentially what Dracula is doing. He's moving around the board, but he's leaving behind along his trail, little, broodlings of, vampires that are starting their own little groups and stuff, or leaving traps and things that you don't want them to not be found, because rather Dracula doesn't want you to find them because it advances his taking over the world agenda. But the hunters are trying to find them and remove them, but also if they come across his trail, they know basically how far away he is, because they see where on the snake line in the row of cards that they've revealed. So they know, okay, he's 3 spaces away from here. And which way do we go to find him? So that deduction part is very interesting. The hunters do need to get prepared, and the event deck is handled in a very interesting way, where if hunters, the best time for them to prepare is at night, but then the card deck gets drawn from the bottom, and if it's a Dracula card, Dracula gets the event card, and he gets to do some nasty things. Of course, there's some slippery ways that he can escape too. But the hunters need to prepare, and they need to really kind of gather together to go after Dracula. If Dracula gets caught on his own, or maybe Dracula becomes a little aggressive, Dracula is just going to, bite you and then fly away, and then you're done. But if you can get multiple hunters together, Dracula is biting one player while the other players are all beating on him. So it's really a game that takes a lot of cooperation, and it's been a blast every time. Number 88 is Concordia, or the version I have is Concordia Venus, which comes with a base game in it, just more maps and more stuff to do. Although I have yet to play the cooperative version, but just the base game is just so good. It really feels like a classic board game, like a Catan-ish style game, but there's some very interesting twists to how it works. And this is the sort of game where you have your hand of cards are actions, and you play them to do things, but eventually you're going to have to pick those cards back up. You will be able to get more cards as you go, and you are spreading around the map, putting houses down, getting resources, producing things, and getting those cards, where the cards are not just actions, the cards also tell you what endgame scoring you're going to get. So, for example, each card will accentuate the scoring of one aspect of the game. So you have to make that decision, not just what action card you want, but also what scoring it improves as well. So very interesting game. The Solitaria expansion, I think, is a must for solo players, because it does allow you to play, I believe, any map solo. And the Venus version, I think, has 4 maps in the box already, which is a ton of content, and there's a lot more available out there. A really solid game, highly recommended. All right, number 87 is Friday. This is the classic Friedman Fries small box, and I mean very small box card game. I do have a playthrough on the channel, I believe, that I did really early on. And this is it's a very punishing but very rewarding solo card game. It's a kind of a deck builder in the sense where you were facing off adventures. You were essentially told how many cards to draw, and whether you want to go beyond that means you have to pay health to draw more cards. And as you're drawing cards, you're potentially adding to the value required, or rather the value you have, the strength value, so that you can hopefully beat the required value and then win that card as a new tool for your deck. It's tough, it's mean. You start off with just so many negative cards and zeros in your deck that, it starts off feeling impossible. But with the right tricks, and you'll probably see me use some of them through my playthrough, it grows and scales well until by the end of the game, you are fighting off pirate ships on your own, and it is just a blast. Again, really fun to play, small box, doesn't take too long either, and there's a decent amount of challenge in there. Number 86 is Glass Road, and this is a Uwe Rosenberg tile laying game, you could say. For playing multiplayer, you have a series of cards. Everyone kind of picks what cards they want to play that round, and then as you reveal them, if anybody else is also playing that card, you get a lesser action. But then they get to play their card for free, essentially, because you only get to play so many from your cards that round, unless someone matches with you. So you want to match with more people because you get more free stuff, but then you also want to have some of your own cards, so you get kind of the better thing. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to get tiles, you're trying to place them on your little forest map area, you're clearing the forest, you're building rivers, you're building ponds, you're mining for things, you're putting different utilities and facilities on your map for point generation and conversion. And the real star of the game, though, is how the resources work. The resources are tracked on this resource wheel that has kind of 2 sides to it. And the way it works is as you gain resources that are necessary for production, so you're creating a gap from the arm of the wheel, like from like the clock face, it will automatically rotate to catch up, automatically spending those resources, but then right at the upper end, automatically creating more of the expensive resources. So this causes a very interesting puzzle where, maybe sometimes you don't want to spend, you don't want to create resources because you don't want to lose some of the basic resources. Or maybe you're trying to most efficiently get that arm to swing as fast as possible to get those better resources. And so it becomes a really tight and very interesting puzzle. I do think solo needs a little bit more tile turning. I would house rule adding a little more. I have a playthrough on my channel. And it's just a great little, very fast to learn and play tile laying, resource management game. My number 85, back Uwe Rosenberg, and this is Le Havre. This is almost the opposite. The resources start tight, but then just explode throughout the game, where you're getting just tons of stuff. Each round, or each turn, new resources get added to these collection piles, and then you do one worker placement spot. And that worker spot is, you either take one pile of resources, or you do one worker placement spot. And those spots are the buildings that you gain and build throughout the game, and then your opponents gain and build throughout the game. So you can go to your friend's house and, maybe pay him some resources in order to use his bread making factory to turn all that wheat that you've been hoarding into bread. And then now you have the food you need to feed your workers. You can then turn resources into other stuff, and you are trying to kind of slowly build up, not quite an engine, but you're trying to build up a city where there are interconnected facilities that will end up netting you more points. And of course, there's different avenues for doing that, either through shipping or just resource production itself, and building bigger and better buildings. It becomes a pretty tight game. Don't be afraid to take loans early on if you need them, especially at higher player counts. But it's just a very interesting game where the timing considerations are very strong in this. It's a lot of fun to play. Number 84 is Under Falling Skies. Now, I first played this on the free print-to-play 9-card solitaire game. I believe it won the competition that year. And I'm so happy that it was eventually adapted into a full board game, because the full published edition, the components are brilliant. The art and stuff is quite good, but they've just expanded the content drastically. There's so much in here. There's you can play resettable campaigns that are randomized, so you can play them multiple times. You can add in various modules to change the game a little bit or add difficulty. The main gist of the game is you are kind of looking at almost like a large Galaga type, Space Invaders type field, where your city is at the bottom and the mothership is slowly coming down each round. And as it comes down, it's spitting out other little spaceships that are going to come down and blow up your city. And what you need to do is, when you place a die, right, because this is a dice placement game, you place a die on a facility in the city below, the die that's, when it's in line with one of those spaceships, it makes when those ships come down that number of spaces. And there are a bunch of symbols on the sky that will trigger based on what happens, like when that spaceship lands on it. So you're trying to use numbers that fit the facilities to generate energy, to activate munitions, to dig deeper and expand your facilities, and so on. But you're also trying to control how far those enemy spaceships move, so you can get them into positions to then shoot them down. It is a very engaging, very puzzly game, quick playing, tons of variety. It's a lot of fun. All right, number 83 is Vengeance Roll and Fight. This is I guess you could say, roll and write version of this Vengeance game series. And if you want to feel like John Wick in a board game, this is the one. It is pretty wild in terms of what you do, but the dice rolling is kind of speed dice rolling. So if you watch my review of it, if you're playing on multiplayers, there's a pool of dice, and you each start off with, I believe, 4. And as you're rolling, if you get the right kind of assignment of dice, you can assign it to an ability and then refill your hand of dice from the pool. And you keep doing that until all the dice are gone. And then you have to stop. And this makes for a tight race against your opponents to grab stuff. But you also be careful too, because you can get wounded in that process as well if you roll off the hearts. And then once everyone's done rolling, you then use these sets off of these various action tiles to run, jump, stab and shoot your way through the enemy compound towards the boss. Different rooms will score, will add different endgame scoring. Like maybe one room will say, if you clear out this room, you activate the scoring, but you also needed to kill all the neighboring blue enemies or something. And so you were running, punching your way through this map. You don't want to end your space where there's enemies that will attack you in between rounds, but you were also trying to kind of make your way to that boss and then have that final showdown with the boss. And it's, I guess, fast-paced. It's quick. In between rounds, you get to upgrade. So there's another little mechanism where you're like getting and unlocking new abilities or getting items or equipment to be able to spend later to do things. The characters are vastly different in this game. You've got the sword wielding guy. You've got the person with like the John Wick style guns. You've got the person who can heal a lot. There's just tons of flexibility. I don't want to spoil too much, but you can watch the review. And when as you build your characters and you're unlocking their abilities, you feel strong. You get to do cool things where you like jump from this room to that room, and then knife these 3 guys, and then run to this room, and then stab the boss 10 times, and so on. And of course, you also have to make your way out at the end of the game too, potentially running back through enemies, which can be dangerous. It's fun. It's intense. There's just a ton of content in a pretty small box, because I think there's 8 different maps, and they're double-sided, and the characters. There's just a lot to enjoy in here, in what feels like a very different roll and write style game. Number 2 is Mage Knight, the board game. This, I know, is probably a lot higher in some people's lists. I do really love and appreciate what Mage Knight does. It's just so long and rules complex that doesn't always hit the table. But I do find it's really not as bad to learn if you're taught the right way. And this is my tip here. Maybe I'll do a playthrough of my channel sometime. The tip is, don't try to memorize what all the different dungeon tiles and facilities do. Just reference the cards. The game comes with a card for every dungeon or every tower or every facility. So don't even bother reading those rules. You can look at them if you need clarity, but the cards pretty much have the rules on them. You just need to learn the base game and how the card play works and stuff like that. But you're an adventurer. You're progressing into the world. You're fighting off creatures. You're, maybe rescuing or maybe destroying, monasteries and things like that. Wizard towers. You're getting more spells. You're getting helpers that will kind of join your retinue and you can use to help fight. And you're facing off against dragons. This is the game that probably best makes you feel like a classic RPG in a board game, where you are steadily growing throughout the game and accomplishing cool stuff, but you never know what you're going to get into. You never know what you're going to find or explore next. And that is very exciting. The way the energy system and the card play works is very engaging as well. There's a little bit of light deck building, and you get to feel stronger and stronger throughout the game. It can be very hard to finish, and I would highly recommend this at solo only, although I have played it with larger player counts, but everyone knew what they were doing. It is just a ton of fun and a ton to explore. Finally, number 81 is Lewis and Clark: The Expedition. This is a race game where you are trying to make it across the continent before your opponents do. That's essentially the gist of it, but you need to have, in order to do that, you need to have different movement types to progress down the path. That, however, is just a very small part of the game, and it kind of replaces victory points in a way in how it works. What you are doing, though, is you are kind of doing like a worker placement. You're either doing workers to the Native American Indian board, where you are kind of trading with the Indians, essentially, with natives to, get resources and get horses and expand your canoes and things like that, or recruit new travelers to help you in your journey. But you're also playing cards and adding more worker placements to those cards in order to, like I said, get, everything, resources, get movements, and stuff like that. But there's a lot of connecting to what your opponents are doing. So there are many cards, in fact, a lot of them, that will look at what neighboring players have in their tableaus, in their currently actively played cards, and will chain off of those. So timing becomes very important because everyone starts off with the same deck. They're going to play that gray card, and you need that gray resource out there so you can get more yourself when you play yours. But then it all comes down to that race down the river and over the mountains and the hills. And you are literally slowed down by your excess baggage. If you're carrying too much stuff, if you have too big of a party of natives with you, if you have too many cards unplayed, it will slow you down and prevent you from getting there. I do recommend the newest edition of the game. Helps that slowing mechanism. You just feel a little more natural. So you're not going back and forth and back and forth. It's just kind of limits to how far you can move. That works really well. It's very thinky, very brain burny. I would probably play it at 3 max. Solo also works very well. And it is a very good, tight Euro game with some fantastic artwork from Vincent Dutrait, as usual. That is my 90 to 81. Next, we're going to do, the next 10. So thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.